Welcome to NTD Newsroom. I'm Don Ma. President Trump meets leaders of several African nations at the White House today, all of them looking to make minerals deals with the U.S., and all praising his work to end the 30-year war between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Breaking news on the deadly flooding in Texas. Authorities have confirmed at least 119 deaths across 6 counties. A desperate search is underway with more than 160 still missing in Kerr County alone. And in New Mexico, heavy rains flooded the southern part of the state, killing at least 3 people. We have the latest. A new White House report says import prices dropped despite President Trump's tariff policy. We discussed this with an economist. Harvard University is on notice today to comply with the Trump administration's non-discriminatory policies or possibly lose its accreditation. What is America's current level of reliance on pharmaceutical ingredients from China? What would happen to hospitals, pharmacies, and patients if China suddenly restricted exports? We explore this topic. Russia reportedly breaks its own record for the largest drone attack on Ukraine. Moscow used over 700 drones, almost 50% more than in the previous record.
This is NTD Newsroom, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. The death toll from the Texas floods has risen to at least 119. Over 160 are missing in the Kerr County area, including 5 Camp Mystic campers and 1 counselor. President Trump and the First Lady say they'll visit Texas on Friday. Authorities in the state are currently putting together a timeline of events to share with the public. Kerr County officials urged residents to shelter in place and to avoid areas of destruction. Here's the county sheriff.
As of 8 a.m. this morning Central Time, there are 95 deceased. I'm going to kind of break down the numbers for you. On adults, there's 59, unidentified 14. Children, 36, unidentified 13. Camp Mystic currently still has missing 5 campers and 1 counselor. Officials report there are 161 missing people in Kerr County area. Community members are asked not to conduct debris management of their property until directed by law enforcement.
Heavy rains on early Friday caused the Guadalupe River to rapidly rise. Emergency notifications were sent around 1 a.m. The flood burst riverbanks, leaving behind damaged piles of debris, trees, and cars.
It's extremely treacherous, time-consuming, it's dirty work, the water's still there. So we're having to go layer by layer, peeling these off to make those recoveries.
Reporters asked for specific details during the early hours of the Weather Service's warning, as well as who was in charge of emergency management.
And we're in the process of trying to put a timeline. That's going to take a little bit of time. As I've told you several times, that is not my priority this time. There's 3 priorities. That's locating the people out there, identifying and notifying the next of kin. That is what I'm taking as my job as sheriff here to do.
Some of the victims were spending their summer at Camp Mystic, a Christian summer camp for girls near the river's banks. The camp said they are mourning the loss of 27 campers and counselors. On Monday night, Kerrville Public Utility Board said it restored power to its remaining 3 largest outages in the West Kerr area. One survivor recounts his experience.
We got 8 different alerts. The first one came at 1 o'clock in the morning. The second one came at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the rest, to be honest with you, I counted to see, but the rest, we were in the attic trying to survive at that point.
The governor said they will continue search and rescue efforts. To report missing people or provide more information on the flood, people may call 830-258-1111. David Lamb, NTD News.
In the aftermath of the devastating Texas floods, families are dealing with heartbreaking loss. We hear from some of them as the search continues for missing loved ones.
Behind the numbers of dead and missing in the Texas floods are real people and their families dealing with loss. Macedonio Olvera traveled from Oklahoma to Hunt, Texas after learning of his father's death. Olvera says the floodwaters rose so quickly that his father Jose, who worked and lived on the ranch property, had no time to escape.
Truly, I don't know exactly how it happened, but the water rose to the top of the mountain so quickly that it didn't give time to do anything.
His stepmother is still missing and the search for her continues. The family only has a vague idea of what happened after hearing from a witness.
My stepmother, we haven't found her yet. We're still on that. We keep looking for her. I think they both left the house, but she slipped and he grabbed her. And from then on, they weren't seen anymore. There was another person who told us the story like that.
Another family from Mexico have asked for support from Mexican authorities to find their loved ones.
The Guadalupe River overflowed and dragged them away. This is what happened. It took their house, destroyed it, and the water washed away my nephew, his wife, and their 2-year-old son.
Leonardo Rangel and his family were reported missing after the flood. Their older son survived. According to Mexican media, Rangel's family back in San Miguel de Allende learned about their disappearance through social media and WhatsApp. San Miguel de Allende's mayor Mauricio Trejo said Monday authorities were working to bring aid to families. Most of the deaths were in Kerr County and the county seat of Kerrville, a town of 25,000 residents. As search, rescue, and recovery efforts continue, Kerrville residents are trying to help the animals left behind. At a local pet shelter, 18-year-old college student Brooklyn Mosey with a black kitten in her arms.
And it's been devastating, really. So I've been praying a lot for God to send me something. And then the other night, this little angel ran up to me, like just crying, straight up to me.
She's home from college for summer vacation and initially volunteered to foster him, but ended up taking him home again.
We are actually trying to find his parents. I'm not trying to steal him. But I do get to foster him now, and I have other cats at home who are loving cats who can make him feel comfortable as well. But he found the most loving home he could have, so I'm glad he did.
Kerr County Animal Services employee Mike Wong has been helping animals in the region for 8 years. For him, this moment is unlike anything he's ever seen before.
You see trailers and RVs and tiny homes and just everything. Big trees that have, 100-foot trees that have been here for 100 years or more, and they're all knocked over, bent over.
Satellite images released on Tuesday show parts of central Texas and the Guadalupe River before and after deadly floods swept the region. Texas Governor Greg Abbott said Tuesday the bodies of 94 flood victims, about a third of them children, have been recovered in Kerr County alone.
A Texas-based cloud seeding company says it's facing threats and harassment following devastating floods in central Texas. The CEO of Rainmaker Technology says the company is being falsely blamed for causing the floods, even though their operation was over 150 miles away and days earlier. He insists the rainmaking effort was small, brief, and stopped immediately once forecasters saw more moisture moving in from the Gulf. Rainmaker has paused all operations in Texas while offering support to flood victims. Torrential rains triggered flash floods in New Mexico that killed at least 3 people, including 2 young children. In the resort village of Ruidoso, dozens were trapped in homes and vehicles. Here are the details.
There's a car.
Major flooding in the New Mexico mountain village of Ruidoso. Emergency responders carried out dozens of rescues after floods swept through the community. A time-lapse camera captured the dramatic rise of the Rio Ruidoso Tuesday afternoon. Local artist Caitlin Carpenter sought shelter in a riverside brewery. Then she saw something unbelievable. Her friend's home floating down the river. Luckily, there was no one home. Carpenter said her friend doesn't stay there during flood season. Carpenter herself lost her art studio to flooding last year. As night fell, crews combed through debris for the missing and cleared roads choked with mud and stranded vehicles. 3 shelters have opened in Ruidoso for people who could not return home. Matt DeMaria, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service in Albuquerque, said one of the reasons the floods were so bad was because storms dumped rain on land that was badly burned by wildfires last year. Burn scars from the 2024 South Fork and Salt fires prevented the soil from absorbing the rain, sending a rush of water downhill. Early measurements show the Rio Ruidoso crested at over 20 feet. If confirmed, that would be a record high.
More on trade. Trump yesterday announced there will be a 50% tariff on imported copper. The aim is to boost U.S. production of a metal critical for electric vehicles, military hardware, the power grid, and many consumer goods.
Ones we did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out.
Why don't you announce copper?
And we did cars. and now today we're doing copper.
U.S. COMEX copper futures jumped more than 10% after the announcement. Trump did not say when the tariff would take effect. The Trump administration announced a so-called Section 232 investigation into U.S. imports of copper in February. The tariff is expected to significantly affect Chile, Canada, and Mexico. Those three countries ranked as the largest suppliers of copper to the U.S. last year. Pharmaceuticals will also be targeted. President Trump said yesterday he will impose tariffs of up to 200% on pharmaceutical products imported into the U.S. Trump told a cabinet meeting the tariffs will be revealed very soon, but they will not take effect immediately. The Commerce Department launched an investigation in April to determine the security implications of importing pharmaceutical products and their ingredients. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said yesterday that the probe is still ongoing. Lutnick says more details on pharmaceutical tariffs will be released by the end of the month. The European Union is focused on reaching a trade deal with the U.S. Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said today the EU is working closely with President Trump's administration. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says he is optimistic the EU can come to an agreement with the U.S. by the end of this month at the latest.
This is above all in the interest of our export-orientated economy. This applies to the chemical industry, the pharmaceutical industry, and the mechanical engineering industry. It applies to the automotive industry, the steel industry, and the aluminium industry. There is a lot at stake here.
We do prefer a negotiated solution. This is why we're working closely with the U.S. administration to get an agreement. And I had a good exchange with President Trump earlier this week to help move things forward. We're looking for a reliable framework from which we can keep building our common trade.
Von der Leyen called the scale and scope of tariffs imposed on the EU by the U.S. this year unprecedented. The European leader vowed that the EU will stick to their principles and defend their interests. Von der Leyen says they will continue the work in good faith and get prepared for all scenarios. Meanwhile, a new report from the White House, or the White House Council of Economic Advisors, found that prices for imported goods have dropped in the first 5 months of the year, even though overall goods prices have risen in the same period, challenging the notion that President Donald Trump's tariff policies are fueling higher inflation. Joining us now to discuss is Lydia Mashburn-Newman, economist, managing director of monetary economics at the American Institute for Economic Research. Good afternoon, Lydia. So your thoughts on this report? Does it contradict the idea that tariffs raise costs for consumers?
Yeah, so the report has been interesting. It seems a little bit like the data is being selectively chosen, but it is true. Tariffs at the end of the day typically are not inflationary, so we wouldn't necessarily see it to be a general rise in prices, which is one definition of inflation. What we would expect to see is a one-time price increase on those goods on which a tariff has been imposed. And it's also true that many of the tariffs, while they were broad and sweeping as announced on Liberation Day back earlier this year, many of those have not yet been fully implemented, and we have arrived at about a 10% baseline that we're hearing many businesses, the U.S. importer of these goods is the one who pays those, and so far they're trying to find ways not to have them pass through onto consumers. So it wouldn't necessarily be surprising that we're not seeing this necessarily show up in the data. It'll be interesting to see what happens as we move to the August 1st deadline with these larger, broader tariffs that are likely to be imposed at that time that we had been expecting to be implemented today.
Okay, so on that point, do you think it is the reality that producers may be competing more aggressively on price to retain market share, and that's why some of them, or importers as well, are absorbing the costs?
Yeah, so a lot of businesses are very well experienced, unfortunately, with how to deal with price increases and their consumers. They had a recent experience with the large inflation that we had back in 2022. So they know how far they can push their consumer with a price increase. And many of them think that the consumers are already sort of at their limit. And so what we're hearing is that businesses, whether it's the importer or other folks who end up ultimately selling the good, the importer pays the initial tax, but the one who sells the good at the end of the day anywhere along that part of the supply chain, it sounds like businesses are trying to find ways to find cost savings or eat that additional cost of the tariff. And they're also waiting to see what the tariff actually looks like, because not all tariffs have been fully implemented yet. And so far, they have been relatively small based on the amounts that they could reach to based on pronouncements just today and yesterday.
So generally speaking, is it more likely that tariffs raise prices for consumers, or is it that it's sort of negligible?
Yeah, so it depends on the rate of tariff. It is true, a tariff is a price increase. It is usually a one-time price increase, like we had with the steel tariffs under the first Trump administration, where we saw increases in the price of goods that use steel and aluminum, especially washing machines, automobiles, and other items. And so usually you impose a tariff, there's a one-time price increase, and you are then at that new higher level of prices. That's not necessarily inflation, which inflation would be a continuing increase in prices as we go along. So what we're seeing is, will these tariffs, we do think that they will end up increasing the prices of certain specific goods and sectors in the economy, depending on which nations and which goods come from which nations end up with these higher tariff rates. But so I do think we should expect a price increases. And we have actually seen some of this, or some evidence. We're looking not necessarily through just CPI and PCE, but where you're seeing price changes even in pricing listed on Amazon. You're seeing some changes based on where the country of origin is. So there are some adjustments being made that are being already passed on to consumers that aren't necessarily always reflected in the CPI or PCE data that the government typically looks at as statistics. So they are coming in a slow trickle in different places. It isn't necessarily uniform, but at the end of the day, we should always remember that a tariff is not borne by the nation from whom those goods are coming. It is borne by the business that chooses to import that good. And these are almost many times US-based companies, ultimately. And it is especially impacting smaller businesses, smaller startup businesses who get a lot of their input products from nations like China or Bangladesh, or places where they can get cheaper input goods like a carton for their product or packaging for their shipping materials. So we're actually hearing anecdotally, especially people in more of the gig economy or people who might sell on Etsy, these are things that are increasing their costs and burdens of production. So it will be interesting. Larger corporations have a way of dealing with this and shifting the costs because they're large. It's these smaller businesses that we definitely want to be being very mindful of the impacts on them.
And Trade Secretary, Secretary Besson is projecting $300 billion in tariff revenue this year. What do you make of that projection? And that's nearly quadruple what we brought in recent years. That's a good thing, right?
It can be a good thing in that more revenue helps with the U.S. budget deficit. However, that is ultimately being borne by the U.S. consumer. So we're basically just increasing taxes on the U.S., even though we're calling it a tax on another country. It is the U.S. that ends up paying these. So it could be beneficial if it's being offset by maybe, like in the Big Beautiful Bill, reductions in other types of taxes. But we also just have a growth in government where we are spending a great deal of money and not generating enough revenue to cover those expenses. So $300 billion might be something, but it's a bit of a drop in the bucket compared to our interest expenses, overall expenses on defense spending, expenses on our entitlement programs. So I think at the end of the day, it's somewhat of it's possible we get $300 billion, but we are far away from closing the deficit. And we're also still extracting this from the American people. The incidence of the tax still falls on the American people. So we're basically asking them to pay for more at the end of the day.
Okay, you mentioned the Big Beautiful Bill earlier. I'm wondering, you're saying these tariffs could be a tax on the American people. The bill makes permanent tax cuts, right? Incentives introduced by the 2017 tax cuts. For example, keeping lower income taxes, tax rates for individuals, and restoring full tax write-offs for businesses as well that buy new equipment, extending tax breaks, right, for small businesses, small business income. This will all boost the economy, right, and will counter the tariffs, as you say they are a tax.
So some of the provisions I think could be quite healthy in terms of reducing a tax burden on certain sectors of the economy. As you mentioned, the standard tax deduction that most people who file their income taxes, they are not only getting an extension of what they had, which was a higher level of basic exemption of income they don't have to pay taxes on. That amount has increased a bit for both individual filers as well as those filing jointly. And so this is good in the sense that it is extending the tax cuts further and improving those tax cuts. Some of this, though, is what was already expected. Most people weren't expecting a big tax hike when these expired. So the juice, so to speak, from that level of tax relief might not be as great as it would be if we were moving from, say, a higher tax rate than where we have been up to now. But as you mentioned, there are other parts of the bill that could potentially be helpful and useful. The qualified business tax deductions are really helpful for small businesses. There are also provisions for no taxes on tips and overtime, or up to $6,000 of Social Security benefits. The first two of those, though, are temporary. They only last till 2028, so it will be a relatively brief period. But we should keep in mind, while it can be helpful to reduce the overall tax burden, that can lead to spur more investment, and there are investment provisions that are beneficial, including 100% expensing for businesses, which is a great investment tool, or rather, it promotes investment. But we do want to be mindful when the tax code starts to get this complex. It can end up actually harming not just economic activity, but some of consumers' choices, because we start to make decisions based on the tax relief we may get instead of what may be most beneficial for our current situation or our family situation. Take, for example, the interest deduction on autos. That's one of the things that's been added. We saw this when you used to have large interest deduction on housing. It encouraged an overconsumption in the amount of house that a family would purchase. And as we know, this had very sad consequences during the housing crisis in 2007, 2008. And so I would be concerned that this tax deduction on auto interest might push people into more car than they would really otherwise take on, more debt than they would otherwise take on to furnish their car. So we should be very mindful that the tax code, the simplest, lowest tax rate usually tends to be both the most efficient for revenue for government as well as the least distortionary in the economy. So I would like to have seen it with fewer carve-outs and more across the board, just clean taxes that people can easily grapple with, instead of getting the reams of regulatory IRS tax code that will inevitably come from these provisions.
Okay, just to wrap up here, can I have your assessment on what you think the overall landscape, economic landscape will look like in the coming months, years, keeping in mind the tariffs, the big beautiful bill, tax cuts, and as well S&P 500, at least right now, which some see as sort of a benchmark for the U.S. economy, is near record highs, or a few days ago we're actually exceeding record highs. I mean, taking everything into account, do you think the outlook is good on the U.S. economy?
I think there are the possibility for some headwinds is still out there. The tariffs and the uncertainty is still looming a little bit. I think the stock market has kind of come to terms and grappled with, okay, we're going to get tariffs at some sort of higher rate at some point. And they're roughly thinking somewhere between 10, maybe 25%. And so I think the stock market maybe isn't the ultimate end-all bellwether for how we're doing. I think we want to continue to be looking at things like inflation, what's happening with inflation, what's happening in the labor market, especially. Are we going to see, we did see businesses kind of pause. We didn't see a lot of new job openings for a while, although we had a great month last month compared to expectations. So I do think there are possibilities for headwinds. The tariffs provide uncertainty, and businesses have to grapple with those, and long-term investment decisions are sort of being a little bit put on hold. And all of those will eventually have some effect on overall economic growth for the remaining months of the year. And so I'm not sure that we're looking at direct recession anytime soon, but I do think we're looking at a somewhat dampening overall economic effect compared to where we might have been otherwise had we had less uncertainty from provisions like the tariffs. Now, we could get a bit of a boost from some of the provisions in the tax code, some of these tax changes, but I do think that there are still some concerns with how that at the end of the day is going to be implemented, including the regulatory process of writing out those regulations and how that's going to affect business decision making. So I think overall we're pretty optimistic that we can. The American economy is incredibly resilient, and we manage change quite well. Sometimes volatilely at first, like the stock market did in April of this year, but eventually we find a new normal and we find a way of coping with the changing data and the changing regulatory environment. So, but I do hope that the Trump administration will focus on things like streamlining the tax code in the process of writing these regulations for implementing the Big Beautiful Bill. I do wish that they would focus on government spending, because reducing that will play a big role in longer term interest rates that affect housing, mortgage rates, and car rates. And so there's still a lot of work to be done on the policy front, I think, in the months and years ahead.
Okay, Lydia, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
Two Trump administration notices today increase pressure on Harvard University to comply with its immigration and anti-discrimination policies. We have that story when we come back.
Hi, I'm Ty Pennington, here for Choice Home Warranty. They protect my home from expensive repairs, and they can do the same for you. No matter if it's your refrigerator, plumbing, or more than 20 other home systems and appliances, Choice Home Warranty has saved millions of homeowners a whole lot of money. For a low monthly fee, you get their nationwide network of trusted local technicians with plans that cover repairs and replacements done quickly and the right way. No more headaches searching for technicians. No more budget-breaking chaos. Just a peace of mind of having Choice Home Warranty at your service. Call Choice Home Warranty now and save big with their special offer of your first month free and free limited roof coverage. Call now.
Call Choice Home Warranty for your free personalized quote and to get your first month free. Call in the next 5 minutes, and as our special offer, you'll receive free limited roof coverage. Call now to lock in your rate and save big. Call 800-210-6422, 800-210-6422.
What if you could whiten your teeth by simply brushing your teeth? Now you can with Smile Actives, the teeth whitening breakthrough that safely gets your teeth white and keeps them white every day, just by brushing your teeth.
I never thought that whitening my teeth could be so easy. I just put the gel on the brush, the toothpaste on it, brush, and I can see my white teeth.
Simply add Smile Actives to any toothpaste, and our patented PolyClean technology activates into a powerful microfoam that penetrates into the enamel surface to safely lift and remove stains.
You need a simple way to whiten your teeth, without strips, without trays, without going to the dentist. And it was about time that a product was developed that you would be able to do that with just brushing.
And now Smile Actives is even better with new Pro Whitening Gel with 33% greater whitening power, clinically shown to whiten teeth faster, up to 8 shades. 100% of users saw whiter teeth. On food stains, coffee and wine stains, even on veneers, crowns, and dentures.
I eat the blueberries, I drink the coffee, and I know that Smile Actives will keep my teeth white every day.
If you could use something so easy like Smile Actives to take yellow teeth to white teeth, why wouldn't you?
Why spend hundreds of dollars for whitening treatments at the dentist when now you can whiten your teeth with new Smile Actives Pro Whitening Gel every time you brush your teeth? Call or go to smileactives.com and for a limited time get new Pro Whitening Gel for just $24.95. Order in the next 5 minutes and buy one get one absolutely free for just $24.95. That's 2 for 1 and save 58%. We'll even include free shipping. Get your teeth whiter guaranteed or return it within 60 days for your money back.
I smile every day now.
The difference is literally night and day.
So now I'm always smiling, always choosing, because now my teeth are much whiter.
This offer is not available in stores, so call or click now before the special buy one get one free offer goes away.
The Trump administration ramps up its pressure on Harvard today with 2 notices that accuse the Ivy League giant of failing to comply with agency policies. One notice questions whether the university meets accreditation standards. NTD's Arlene Richards reports.
3 federal agencies on Wednesday are seeking compliance from Harvard. First, the Departments of Education and Health and Human Services notified Harvard's accrediting commission that the university has violated federal anti-discrimination laws. The notice, sent to the New England Commission of Higher Education, warns that Harvard may be at risk of losing its accreditation. Having an official accreditation indicates the education provided by a school meets a certain standard of quality. Harvard is considered to be America's top Ivy League school. But according to the two agencies, the school isn't meeting the commission standards for non-discriminatory policies and practices in recruitment, admissions, employment, and other areas. The notice cites federal law that requires the commission to establish a plan to return a school to compliance. The agencies say they relied on reports of anti-Semitic incidents against Jewish students between October 7, 2023, and the present. In other agency action on Wednesday, the Department of Homeland Security notified Harvard of its plan to legally order the release of the school's student exchange program records. In a letter to Harvard, DHS said it would send administrative subpoenas due to the school's repeated refusal to comply with previous requests. They're seeking information about the misconduct of foreign students on its campus, including criminal charges. Refusing to comply with an administrative subpoena carries heavy consequences, including civil penalties, criminal charges, and termination of Harvard's student exchange program. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The Trump administration is suing the California Department of Education. The Justice Department says allowing transgender athletes to compete on girls' sports teams violates federal law. The move escalates an ongoing battle between the administration and California. The DOJ lawsuit says California's transgender athlete policies violate Title IX. That federal law bans discrimination in education based on sex. The department says California's rules, quote, are not only illegal, but unfair and also demeaning. Earlier this year, the Education Department under Trump launched an investigation into California's policies. The department gave California 10 days last month to agree to change the policies, but the state refused. Turning to border enforcement, Mayor Karen Bass says Los Angeles is joining a lawsuit against the Trump administration. The suit challenges what it describes as unlawful tactics used for immigration enforcement. Bass yesterday accused the federal government of, quote, pressing the envelope to see how far the American public will tolerate the federal seizure of power. The lawsuit was filed by immigrant rights groups last week. It seeks a temporary restraining order. It aims to stop the Trump administration from what it calls targeting people based on their race and denying detainees due process. Officials say the lawsuit does not seek to block immigration enforcement, but rather, quote, the unconstitutional manner in which the government is doing it. Today, a federal appeals court overturned an influencer's conviction for posting misleading memes on social media. Prosecutors at the time alleged that he attempted to suppress Democratic turnout in the 26th presidential election. The Court of Appeals in Manhattan ordered a lower court to enter a judgment of acquittal for Douglas McKinney. The court found that trial evidence failed to prove that McKee conspired with others to influence the election. In 2016, the influencer posted memes telling supporters of the then Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton that they could vote by text message or on social media. McKee was convicted in Brooklyn federal court in March 2023 for conspiring to interfere with voters' rights. He was sentenced to 7 months in prison. McKee posted on X today after the Second Circuit ordered his acquittal, writing, quote, hallelujah. An imposter using artificial intelligence to impersonate Trump administration officials. The State Department is warning diplomats that individuals have used the tech to pretend to be Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Here's the department's spokesperson, Tammy Bruce.
The State Department, of course, is aware of this incident and is currently monitoring and addressing the matter. We're not at a point here where I will discuss or portray what actions are being taken or his reaction. We live in a technological age that we are well enmeshed in, and I'll leave it at that.
The department discovered that an imposter posing as Rubio had attempted to reach out to at least 3 foreign ministers, a U.S. senator, and a governor. That's according to a diplomatic cable last week, first reported by the Washington Post. It's the latest instance of a high-level Trump administration figure targeted by an imposter. There was a similar incident reported in May involving President Donald Trump's chief of staff, Susie Wiles. In a surprise move, CEO Linda Yaccarino said today she would step down from the top role. She took the top spot at X in 2023 to help Elon Musk execute his vision to transform the platform. Before taking that job, Yaccarino spent several years modernizing ad business of Comcast NBC Universal. X did not immediately respond to a request for comment. A chatbot developed by the Elon Musk-founded company XAI was in hot water recently. The bot, named Grok, removed what it called inappropriate social media posts. Here's more.
It happened after X users and the Anti-Defamation League complained it produced content with anti-Semitic tropes and praise for Adolf Hitler. The Anti-Defamation League, or ADL, is a non-profit organization formed to combat anti-Semitism. It urged Grok and other large language model software that produce human-sounding text to avoid producing content rooted in anti-Semitic and extremist hate. The bot later posted on X, "We are aware of recent posts made by Grok and are actively working to remove the inappropriate posts." Musk promised an upgrade to Grok last month. He said there was, quote, "far too much garbage in any foundation model trained on uncorrected data." Issues of political biases, hate speech and accuracy of AI chatbots have been a concern since at least the launch of OpenAI's ChatGPT 3 years ago. Grok ran into further trouble in Turkey on Wednesday. A court there blocked access to the bot after it generated responses authorities said included insults to President Tayyip Erdogan, Turkey's founder Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, and religious values. It was the first such ban on access to an AI tool in the country. Neither X nor its owner Elon Musk has commented on the Turkish court's decision.
Coming up, what is America's current level of reliance on foreign pharmaceutical ingredients from China? What would happen to hospitals, pharmacies, and patients if China suddenly restricted exports? We explore this topic after the break.
All throughout your home, appliances and systems just wait for the worst time to break down and leave you with expensive repairs. Unless you have a plan from Choice Home Warranty.
All home appliances and systems have a breakdown clock, and when it expires, it will cost hundreds and potentially even thousands of dollars to fix or replace. That's why every homeowner should have a plan with Choice Home Warranty, like I do. For a low monthly fee, a Choice Home Warranty plan will cover your heating, air conditioning, plumbing, appliances, and more. Don't let an unexpected repair wreck your budget. With Choice Home Warranty, that covered repair is fixed or replaced for you.
Choice Home Warranty has been a great company to work with, and they've taken care of us. I would suggest anybody who lives in a home not to be in a home without them.
Avoid the ticking clock of home appliances and systems breaking down with a plan from Choice Home Warranty. Call now to get your first month free. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage. That's $200 in total savings.
With a nationwide network of over 25,000 technicians, I don't worry about how my next breakdown will be handled. With a click of a button, my claim is filed, and Choice Home Warranty starts the clock. They do the legwork, hiring the right technician and handling the cost of covered repairs and replacements. And check this out. For a limited time, you can get 1 month of coverage free. Did you hear me? Free. You can't beat that deal with a sledgehammer. But hurry, this offer is ticking away. Once the clock hits zero, poof, it's gone.
Don't fear the breakdown clock. Get a plan from Choice Home Warranty and get round-the-clock money-saving protection you can count on. Call in the next 10 minutes and we'll give you $120 off your first year of coverage, plus get your first month free. This offer won't last long.
Get your home protected. Call now.
Don't wait for an appliance or system to break down. Call before that happens.
Call 800-983-3523. 800-983-3523.
That first time seeing my son, I feel like my life did a 180. I was already trying to change my perspective of life and really just be a father figure that I never had. Being present is the most important part. I'm still growing every day, becoming a better version of myself, to be the better mirror for my son. I mean, he's just growing. He's becoming his own person. Man, at first I saw him dance, bro, he brings the vibes, you know what I'm saying? He brings the party no matter what. he really a definition of like why he loves somebody. And I love him to the death of me.
The Trump administration has launched an investigation into the effects of importing semiconductors and pharmaceutical products on national security. Joining us now to discuss is Gerard Filitti, attorney specializing in national security law and policy and counterterrorism. Good afternoon, Gerard. So how would you characterize the scale of America's reliance right now on foreign pharmaceutical ingredients, for example, from China?
The reliance is massive. Over 70% of the active ingredients in pharmaceuticals are imported, a lot from China, some from India as well. But this is significant reliance that if these sources were cut off, we would have a very tough time producing a lot of life-changing and very much essential medicine that we all currently need and rely on. So the reliance on foreign imports of medicine has been substantial and has increased over the years to the point that we do not have the domestic capacity to make these active ingredients that go into the finished product.
What would China's ability to, potentially weaponize the pharmaceutical supply chain look like in the real world?
Well, in the real world, the biggest issue of weaponization is cutting off supply. We're not so much worried about the quality of the goods, their product control aspects that go into the final goods. But with the absence of these products, then there would be a lack of medicine. And when you go to the pharmacy, you would not be able to receive your blood pressure medication. You would not have your heart pills. You would not have your cholesterol medicine and other life essential medications. So the impact here of having these controlled by the communist Chinese government is if they turn off the tap, ordinary Americans who rely on these medications to maintain their lives, they would suffer.
Okay, but what would you say is the likelihood of that scenario? Would that ever happen?
Well, the likelihood of that would be if there is conflict, especially if there is conflict with Taiwan, if the United States were to involve itself in order to protect our ally Taiwan. We could see China not just threatening, but actually implementing these sorts of export bans that would prevent medicine from reaching customers in America, along with other goods like semiconductors, which America relies on from Taiwan to a very significant degree. So ultimately, this is a concern. The reason why we are concerned is that Chinese communist control of these sources means that we would be hard-pressed to come to the defense of our ally, to the defense of Taiwan, should China want to exert itself in the theater.
So President Trump has proposed tariffs of up to 200% on pharmaceutical imports. In your view, would this be a deterrent from reliance on foreign pharmaceuticals?
The view is, yes, this would be a deterrent from reliance on Chinese pharmaceuticals, but combined with the Chips and Science Act that's already been taking effect, this is retooling American production. We are restarting to redevelop a lot of these products, these medicines in the United States, mostly for semiconductors, but also in medicine. This is something that's much necessary. So I think the effect of these tariffs is to re-educate American businesses that there needs to be a supply chain, a production chain within the United States or from close allies that would not be dependent on the Chinese Communist government for its goodwill to continue producing these and supplying us in case of war or other economic disaster.
How far away are we from an American pharmaceutical supply chain? Is that possible entirely?
It's possible. We've certainly done it before, and we have the tools and technology to do it. But with everything else, there's been a regulatory scheme in the United States that's made it much more expensive to produce these goods in the U.S. than to outsource manufacturing to China, to India, to other countries. So the ability is certainly here to do it. It would take multiple months to several years to have the full capacity to produce in the United States what we are relying on the communist Chinese government for, but it is certainly possible, and we've already seen companies starting at some products to bring back production of some pharmaceuticals.
And Gerard, I'd like to talk about semiconductors as well. What is the level of reliance on semiconductors from Taiwan?
It's beyond significant. Over 90% of advanced logic chips are manufactured in Taiwan. These are the chips that go into our telecommunications, into our military hardware, into essential electronic devices that our government and our military rely on and need to continue to rely on in case of war. But that's also in consumer goods, everything from the cell phones that you have in your pocket to the operating of trains and mass transit. So cutting off this supply would be devastating to the United States in the event of Chinese communist attempts to take Taiwan. And this is one more reason why President Trump is looking into the situation, looking to impose tariffs, and looking to bring back to the United States a lot of this production. Remember, this is a relatively new phenomenon. Up until 20-something years ago, we were the world's leading producer of these chips. But with exporting and outsourcing, we've allowed Taiwan and other countries to take over American companies and move manufacturing and redevelop manufacturing there. So bringing back production to the United States is top of Trump's agenda, and we're seeing him starting to do that.
So on semiconductors specifically, can you help us understand the impact? Can you help our viewers understand just how everyday American life would be like, if that was cut off, like healthcare, consumer tech, military systems?
Well, everything is a microchip these days. Everything from your phone to your computer to going to the hospital, having your blood pressure taken by a machine, having surgery performed. We rely on computers, basically, with semiconductors and chips that are made almost exclusively overseas. So that affects the ability of Americans to continue living their normal lives. Even worse is military. It's the effect on our national security, on everything from our spy satellites to our planes, to the ability to fly our planes and repair them if they're damaged, to conduct the kinetic warfare. All of this would be impacted by supply chain disruption. But worse than that, with semiconductors and chips especially, we're seeing an increase in the attempts by foreign powers to add things to these chips, to hack them essentially, to be able to control or to shut down finished products, to kill the device in your pocket and make it impossible to communicate. So our reliance on, for example, the Chinese Communist government and consumer goods, and our reliance on Taiwan for semiconductors makes us essentially hostage to a world phenomenon. If there is a war, if there is another significant dislocation, it makes our electronic devices stop functioning.
Okay, if America wants to be independent on semiconductors, does that mean, correct me if I'm wrong, does that mean that the U.S. would have to be, U.S. companies have to be more advanced in producing semiconductors like 3 nanometer that TSMC can make? Does the U.S. have to surpass TSMC essentially?
Well, the U.S. does not necessarily have to surpass it. We certainly have the technical means to do that. We certainly have the technology. A lot of these products were invented in American labs. A lot of these products were developed in America under American patent, and they're being copied or imitated or exported overseas. We have the technical know-how. What's been difficult in the last 20 to 30 years is doing the math. It's very expensive to produce these in the United States. This is why we've become so heavily reliant on Taiwan and on other countries for this. This is why in America we don't mine rare earth metals as much as we can, because it's cheaper to rely on foreign sources. And this cost of doing it in the United States is what's led to our dependence on foreign sources. We have the technology, we have the know-how, we just need to be able to afford to do it domestically.
Okay, Gerard, that's our time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming up, President Trump meets leaders of several African nations at the White House today, all of them looking to make minerals deals with the U.S. and all praising his work to end the 30-year war between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Stay tuned.
That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Leaders from several African nations are in Washington meeting with President Trump, all of them praising Trump's efforts to end the Congo-Rwanda conflict, but also to seek investment. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us now live. Jack, good afternoon. First off, what trade deals are these countries looking to make?
Good afternoon, Don. Well, what they're looking for is U.S. investment, particularly in the areas of rare earth, critical minerals, which many of these countries leaders claim to have abundant supplies of. Regarding the investment, though, from the U.S., this is a major change that the Trump administration is saying from previous years and previous administrations, where they're changing from a policy of aid to trade. And that's giving out humanitarian aid in the form of USAID, which was recently cut down by the Trump administration. They're no longer able to give out funding. And instead, they're looking to have U.S. companies come in and invest, get out these rare earth minerals. And they're very important to get these critical minerals because rare earths and criticals go into many of our semiconductors and electronics, which make our everyday appliances, medical equipment, and things like our military weapon systems. So very important things to invest in here. The leaders from these countries included Liberia, Senegal, Gabon, Mauritania, and Guinea. And they were all very eager to partner with the U.S. And this comes as they face the investment from the Chinese Communist Party. The U.S. has for a long time neglected investment in this area, according to President Trump. And meanwhile, the Chinese Communist Party has been opening up its Belt and Road Initiative infrastructure projects in this region, bringing in a lot of projects like ports and dams, but doubling as military installations into them. These African countries are looking for this investment, whoever it comes from. But when it comes from the CCP, they're saddled with billions of dollars in debt. So then the CCP takes over these projects. So there's an obvious interest from these African countries to partner with the U.S. But if the U.S. doesn't step up, then they're obviously going to have to just take what they're given. Here are the presidents from those countries earlier today. Let's take a look.
We also have raw materials, minerals, rare earths. We are not poor countries. We are rich countries when it comes to raw materials, but we need partners to support us and help us develop those resources with win-win partnerships. There is maritime piracy in that area, and we want to work together to stabilize it. You said you had the best equipment, the best military equipment, and that's what we'd like to have. You are welcome to come and invest. Otherwise, other countries might come instead of you.
So we want to encourage American involvement in the investment in Liberia. Yeah, we'd like to see that happen.
Now, this comes along with many of these presidents praising President Trump for his efforts on peacemaking in the Congo-Rwanda war. This is a 30-year war resulting in over 7 million deaths. And President Trump brokering a deal to end that war. Both of the foreign ministers from Rwanda and Congo went to the State Department, met with Secretary of State Marco Rubio last month to sign a peace agreement moving towards a final peace deal, which will officially end this war. All of these presidents saying that, you can't do investment in these countries if there's no peace. And so brokering that deal was essential in terms of getting more investment there in that region. And also some saying that President Trump deserves the Nobel Peace Prize for doing that. And along with other peace efforts, like working towards bringing peace in the Russia-Ukraine war, working towards bringing peace in the Middle East between Israel and Iran, and successfully bringing a peace deal between India and Pakistan after a short but deadly war. Let's take a look at that.
I also wanted to commend you for your commitment to peace throughout the world and the incredible diplomatic success that you had with the DRC, as my colleagues mentioned. You said that this put an end to a long war that claimed many lives, and thankfully, you were here to put an end to this 30-year war.
A Nobel Peace Prize, while I don't see any problem with it, I think that President Trump deserves it for all the efforts that he's worked on. And he brought peace back in the SIAC region. That is my region, the region where DRC and Rwanda signed a deal. And so he is now bringing peace back into a region where that was never possible. So I believe that he does deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. That is my opinion on this.
Now, these countries' leaders also adding in front of the press that they are open for business and encouraging U.S. investment while peace is working toward being reached at this point. Don.
And Jack, President Trump announced more tariffs on countries. What's the latest there?
Right, so he announced a new round of tariffs this morning, just like he did yesterday. This morning, targeting 30% on Sri Lanka, Iraq, Libya, Algeria, 25% on Moldova, Brunei, and 20% on the Philippines, each saying that if they retaliate, then that will be added on top of that. This is these tariff announcements are encouraging these countries to lower their own tariffs and strike a trade deal like Vietnam did earlier last week with the U.S. in having a 20% tariff into the U.S. and allowing the U.S. to import goods into Vietnam tariff-free. But there's also the transshipment part of all of this, where none of these countries can use transshipments to avoid tariffs. That means where one country puts its goods on a boat in another country to ship into the U.S. to avoid those higher tariffs, that will no longer be allowed according to these new tariff policies. He also added that more tariffs are coming to Brazil. That's as the Brazilian president is, according to Trump, unfairly going after his former political opponent and the previous former president of Brazil, Bolsonaro, and calling it even a witch hunt. So he says that more tariffs are targeted toward Brazil that will be coming out very soon. Let's take a look.
The formula was a formula based on common sense, based on deficits, based on how we've been treated over the years, and based on raw numbers. And we're going to have a couple of more coming out today. Brazil, as an example, has been not good to us, not good at all. We're going to be releasing a Brazil number, I think, later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning. We're into it like I have. You know, we've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs, hundreds of billions. We haven't had compliance. We've been treated very unfairly by both friend and foe. And friend has treated us very badly.
So there you have Trump's answer to a question about how he came up with how much of the tariffs are going to be targeted towards each country, and him answering there that they were based upon previous unfair trade policies against the U.S. based upon how unfair they were, according to the president. The president also added that there's no plans to visit Africa at this time, but he'd like to in the future if scheduling permits. Don, back to you.
Okay, Jack, thank you so much for that update. Coming up, the Trump administration is suing California over its transgender athlete policy, claiming it violates federal law. The case intensifies the national debate over transgender athlete participation.